Hello and welcome to One Stop Co-op Shop, your one stop for board game news and reviews. Hold on to your pants, it's time for a special episode.
Welcome to One Stop Co-op Shop. Steve here with a special guest, Eric Bittermann from Sky Kingdom Games.
Hey Steve, how are you? Nice to be here.
Hey Eric, I'm so glad you could join us. So you are here to talk about a new game that's currently on Kickstarter, the Isofarian Guard.
Yeah, we're super excited. We just launched a little over a week ago, and this is expanding upon the Stonebound Saga universe.
That's awesome. So what is the Stonebound Saga universe?
So our company is about 3 years old, and we actually published our first game called the Stonebound Saga on Kickstarter. It was a large skirmish-based game. It had over 70 characters, close to 300 abilities, and it was a card-driven tactical game. And it was our first entry into a saga of games for this world that we were building called Telios. And just last year, we released the first expansion to that game called Visions of Telios. And now the Isofarian Guard is set in that same world as those first two games, but it's completely standalone. So it's the same world, same lore, different things going on. But this really fleshes out the characters in the world quite a bit more.
So the people need to have played these previous games to get into the Isofarian Guard?
Not at all. Like I said, this one's completely standalone. So while people that are familiar with the first two games will see different things that are similar between the two and catch some references, they don't have to know anything about the previous two titles at all to play and enjoy this game.
That's cool. So I'm sure we'll get into the Isofarian Guard game in some more detail very soon here, but I'm curious, what's your relation to Sky Kingdom Games? What's your role?
So I am actually the owner of Sky Kingdom Games. Founded it in 2016. Brought on a couple friends of mine that helped me develop the Stonebound Saga over the years. And I both own the company and am the primary designer on the titles.
That's awesome. So how did you wind up becoming the owner of this and designer? What got you into the hobby?
Well, that's kind of a long story. About almost 20 years ago, I was kind of into miniature tabletop gaming, like war gaming, and had no desire to design games. I was more of a video gamer and still actually play video games. Years ago, I, collected miniatures. I kind of got together with friends and we made up our own like rule sets and just, had a good time. Kind of like, I wouldn't say D&D, but like our own RPG system, made up rules on the fly. We were all big fans of like old school JRPGs, Final Fantasy, Chrono Trigger, Secret of Mana, Final Fantasy Tactics. So taking different inspirations from titles like that, creating our own system on the tabletop setting with miniatures. And over the years, the same group would just keep getting together on a weekly basis. And eventually the system kind of converted or transitioned into a card-driven system instead of the miniatures. I don't know when that was exactly, but the mechanics just kind of flowed into a grid system where cards would move. And that's actually where the first ideas for the Stonebound Saga came from. And the more we developed it just over time, the friend group really loved the game. And eventually a lot of people were like, you should, share this out and get it out in the public for more people to see it. So we started to show it out and took it to a couple conventions, and the feedback that we got was people really loved the game. And then they said, maybe you should, take a shot at publishing this game and getting it out there. The rest is history.
So you decided to publish your own game right out the gate?
Right out of the gate, yeah. Just like I said, it was just with a friend group years ago, and going into it, I actually already own a computer consulting firm. I work as in IT for a living, so I knew a little bit of the business side and starting a corporation and things like that. So I was able to do that side of it, knew how to run a business. I had a game already designed that we had been working on for, close to 15 years with a big group of people. So it just seemed natural to do both the publishing and the designing together, though I had plenty of feedback not to do both from people like, do one or the other, it's so much work. And it is. I will confirm that. now that I'm in it, I do wish that I could in one or the other. I do enjoy both, but I really enjoy designing games. That's really where my passion is.
Yeah, I was surprised when I was looking at the Skykin games that you were listed as both. I'm like, wait, what? And because I know that's a lot of work. So,
It is
and
like a second full-time job for sure.
that's a lot to manage. So I appreciate you being on the show.
Absolutely.
So curious, what are your favorite types of games? You mentioned you like video games and JRPGs. Does that also translate over to the board game side? We like RPG style board games, or what do you like?
Yeah, I would say in the video game realm, open world stuff, fantasy stuff, Skyrim comes to mind immediately. I do like some random stuff like, I'm playing Overwatch here on the side. I'm playing Octopath Traveler right now on the Switch, which is like a throwback old school JRPG style, but with new graphics. But I also like with board gaming, I'm all about thematic, like heavily thematic and strategic games, like worker placement stuff. I like dice placement stuff. So like I'm looking at my shelf right now, Raiders of the North Sea and all the expansions, a little bit of Role Player and all the expansions. I've got Vindication over there. I've got Gloomhaven over there, Charterstone, Grim Forest. Yeah, just about everything. I've got a good range of that. So yeah, whatever the game group likes, I'm open to just about everything.
That's great. I think our listeners are probably dying to learn more about what is Isofarian Guard. So why don't you give us a description of the game?
So the Isofarian Guard is a 1 to 2 player narrative-driven game, and it is set in the world of Telios in the country of Isofar, and you are taking the role of the Isofarian Guard and journeying across the country. You're going to actually be controlling 2 characters from the Guard through 4 different campaigns that span over 30 hours. And like I said, this is a narrative-driven game, so there's lots of story, both written in the campaign books, and something unique with this game is that we partnered with a company called Foreteller, who did complete voice acting and a musical score of the entire narration. So it's an incredibly immersive experience. As far as the mechanics in the game, the primary mechanic is bag building to build your character along your journey. You're doing some card and tableau management and building. You're doing character customization. You're doing equipment crafting, which is a really huge part of the game. There's a really cool enemy automa system that kind of responds to what you do and the timing of what you do, or what you choose to do on your combat turns. And then, of course, like I said, it's an open world experience. I really wanted to simulate letting the player do whatever they wanted right from the get-go, right after the first scene is over, and the game says, okay, this is where the next story trigger happens. You can decide to go to that story trigger and continue the main story, or you could just head off somewhere else and trigger side quests and go fight enemies over here, or go have a conversation with the different characters of the world. There's all kinds of things to do in the Isofarian Guard.
So this sounds like a very immersive RPG. And when you're describing it and reading about it online, I definitely see like Skyrim in there a little bit, just from like the Nordic theme and this whole open world environment. Is this kind of where you may draw some inspiration from, or tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, certainly. I actually had a really cool interview with the guys at Man vs. Meeple. They're actually really close to me. They're in Indianapolis, and I'm in the Chicagoland area. And that was one of the first things that they said, is it really reminded them of that experience with Skyrim. It's open world. I can go wherever I want. I can craft equipment. I can, level up my character, that kind of a thing. So certainly there was some inspiration there. The actual look of the characters and the country theme, that wasn't on purpose. The northeastern country of Telios, of this world that we've created, is that type of look. It is a cold country in the north with mountains, and it's got the plains in the center and forests in the south. The world of Telios that we've created actually has 7 unique countries with different types of people, different lots of diverse people groups and looks. And actually the plan is to expand upon all the countries of Telios eventually. So right now we're focusing on Isofar, but like I said, there's 6 other countries that we can explore. And you'll actually hear about a couple other countries in this game. You'll hear about Koros, you'll hear about Falmond in this game, and you'll hear about those people groups. And actually, even in the first scene of this game, you see the Isofarian Guard has actually just taken out a patrol of soldiers, of scouts that have come in from the country of Falmond.
That sounds really interesting. So there's, assuming this goes well for you and everything, which is it's looking doing really well on Kickstarter. Are you planning to maybe expand the system in the future?
That is currently the plan. We've got a couple different things in development right now, and all that obviously will depend on how well the Isofarian Guard does. But yeah, we want to continue expanding this world as far as we can go. We've got a really ambitious vision for what we want to do. Like I said, it started with the Stonebound Saga, and it's a saga. It's a whole series of games to really flesh out this world. The Stonebound Saga, like I said, was just a skirmish game, and it was just a ton of characters, 70 different unique characters, but it was just a skirmish game. Like, why are they fighting? Who are these people? You know, what are these places? And while we love the Stonebound Saga and it's a great tactical game, it didn't dive into the people, the personalities, the emotion, the countries. So this game begins that deep dive into the world, and hopefully we can continue that in multiple titles after this as well.
So RPG type games and leveling up and dungeon crawls, they're found everywhere in the board game hobby. What really makes this stand out differently? This is one of our questions from Nick Skeen from our community.
Definitely, I would say the biggest thing with this game is the feeling of freedom. That like I said, right from the beginning of the game, I'm free to explore. I don't have to go to the main story. It is a story-driven game, and it's all about the story at the end of the day. But you will have so many other things to do. This is like a completionist game in a lot of ways. Like, I can do this entire crafting tree. We have a mining system where the different characters can go mine different various minerals and stones, combine them together to create custom accessories. They can do over 50 different unique side quests in the game. So they'll have all these different things to do and the main story, and everything is going to be voice acted with custom music around it. That, as far as I know, really hasn't been done to this level. And in a lot of ways, I'm trying to bridge the gap between the digital and the analog here. The experience of playing Skyrim on my computer, but the tactile touch of moving things on the table, the weighted chips, the huge map and miniatures, things like that.
So you've mentioned a couple of times about having the soundtrack, and I gotta admit, I'm gonna geek out here a little bit, but when I heard that soundtrack, I got my blood moving. I'm a huge sucker for epic movements like that and orchestral music. When I'm listening to music normally, I'm listening to that type of music. My wife just thinks I'm weird, and I probably am, but like Hans Zimmer stuff,
Sure, yeah.
John Williams, and there's another group, Two Steps from Hell is the name of it. Oh gosh, I love that stuff.
Sure.
So yeah, that when I heard that and you had this epic orchestral music going on, I got super interested in this game.
Just a little bit of background. Music is a really big part of my life. I'm actually a musician. I've been playing drums and piano for over 30 years, and I teach percussion. And just music is so powerful. It brings that truly immersive emotional experience. Some of my best games growing up had incredible soundtracks. And with the wrong music, the whole experience changes.
I completely agree.
Yeah, so when designing a game like this, I just knew the sound had to be right. I couldn't go to a license-free library of music and just slap those tracks in there. It would not feel right. So when we were doing the voice recording, I wanted the music to actually ebb and flow around what people are saying. When there was a big emotional moment, I wanted the music to crescendo right into that area so you would feel the scene even more. So yeah, music is a big part of this game as well. And like I said, we have the foreteller experience, which is a separate companion app that comes separately from the game, and that'll have the voice acting and the music behind it. But there's also a separate soundtrack that we have offered with the Stonebound edition, and that's all the music from the game without the voice acting in it as well.
Curious now, you were talking about the orchestral music behind the voice acting, but will the foreteller app, or will it be some other method of having that orchestral music play while you're just simply playing the game, or do you need the soundtrack for that experience?
Yeah, you'll have the option of either no audio, just reading the rule book and playing it as is. You can play the game with the rule book and foreteller, listening to it, or you can play with the rule book and just the soundtrack, and the soundtrack will be a digital product that can be downloaded to your phone or played on whatever platform you like, and the option is yours, really.
So one of our community members, Chuck Fox, was curious about that. He doesn't necessarily like the digital element in his board games, and
Yep.
so it sounds like you can definitely play this separate. If you want the digital, it's there. If you don't want it, no big deal. It doesn't change anything.
Yeah, and to kind of speak to that too, we wanted the foreteller experience to not like get in the way. This isn't like a screen that you're going to have in front of you all the time. It's going to be supplemental and only serves to make the whole game more immersive. So like you're not going to be sitting there, messing around with the screen the whole time and breaking the experience of playing the game. It should be a side thing that just makes the whole experience even better.
I'd like to touch back on that open world discussion we had earlier, because that's a really ambitious task to try to achieve in a board game.
It is.
So, yeah, one of our listeners on another podcast, actually, Jason Perez, he asked the question. So he was asking, when he hears open world, he thinks Skyrim, of course, because that's one of the big games, and we already talked about it a little bit. But when he thinks about it, he thinks it's exciting adventure, but also a buggy mess is how he described it. So how do you tackle having exciting adventure and all these options, but not having it get bogged down?
Yeah, it is a huge challenge. We've been working on the system for quite a while, and the way to keep it open world but yet limited was to have this node system that we have. So if you looked at the world map, there's like over, I think like 40 something or close to 50 different nodes on the map, and each one of these little circle nodes has 5 unique things that happen on them. Those can vary from unique encounters with enemies. They can be side quests. They can be, puzzles. They can be different things that can happen. There could even be multiple side quests on some nodes. So there's going to be a variety of different things to do, but it's very set. Like each zone will have a specific amount of things that you can do. So it's not overloaded and it's not a lot to keep track of. So we use the chips for tracking where to go, where the target is, where you save, different things like that. So it doesn't become too much.
So it sounds like you can go on the main quest and try to complete the campaign, but you can also go on side quests and you can maybe just grind away. How do you design around that if someone's going to just go out and grind and get leveled up super big and just plow through the game? How do you manage that?
For sure. Yeah, that was actually one of the first questions I saw on the comment wall with our Kickstarter campaign is, what if I just want to start the game, immediately go back and forth between a couple different nodes, level up all the way, and then like power level through the entire story. So really quick want to say that you cannot do that. Like you could certainly go back and forth between nodes in the beginning, and what you'll end up doing is you'll get a little bit of experience. You'll get a little bit of, enemy drops from some of the starting areas, but your character really isn't going to progress beyond a certain point, and here's why. So we've gated the enemy system in this game. So you'll start the game, the entire map will have a very similar level of enemies. So there's a star system in the enemies in this game, 1, 2, and 3 stars. In the first area of the game, you'll explore, or the first campaign of the game, you'll explore the entire map, and you can go all the way to the bottom, all the way to the top, and you'll have that very similar level of enemy. When you get to a certain part of the story or the main campaign, after a certain trigger happens, the entire map will upgrade. You'll have stronger enemies start to show up that will give you more experience, that will give you rarer drops. So yeah, you can sit in that first area and you can grind back and forth, but you're not going to get a lot of experience. You're not going to get the items that you really need to craft the interesting equipment, things like that. You're also probably not going to survive that far because in this game, your health stays the same after every battle. You're not recovering it back to full after an encounter. And the only way to recover health in this game is to you're staying in an inn overnight to recover your health, or you're using possible items that you purchase from a shop or an ability. Now, as soon as I said that on the wall, we immediately got another question. I'll just camp right next to an inn. I'll stay at an inn. I'll pop outside the city doing a couple notes and go back in. That would work for sure. And we thought of that. And inns also cost gold. So you're not just going to be able to spam the inn over and over again. You're going to have to go out a little bit to get resources to go back. On top of that, we don't just let you stay at the same inn over and over again. So the narration will actually block you from going back into specific areas. But not to make it too hard, we do have other things besides main inns in the cities throughout this game. So even in, I actually just posted an update last night on our campaign, and that actually has a traveling caravan that moves along the map, and it's kind of it's a mobile inn and a marketplace in a lot of ways. So while you're adventuring across the map, you'll have the option, if you find the caravan, to catch up, stay there, so you don't have to travel all the way back to a city.
That sounds awesome. And I'm curious too. We're talking about this whole narrative campaign and this caravan moving around that you can go find. It's very thematic. I'm curious though of how that caravan moves in the game, and if this is replayable. Like, is it a random movement or is it triggered on very specific locations? So if I play the campaign once, I know where it's going to be, and I could anticipate that.
Yep, for sure. That's something that we've talked about. We played with a couple different systems about how it could, move this many spaces per turn and around. And we didn't really want the character to be, chasing it around the map. And will I ever catch up, or do I have to predict where it's going to go? It didn't seem right. So the way that we have the system is it will jump to specific areas of the map after specific story quests. We're working on a system to where it will randomly move to a different part of the map after. So the triggers will stay the same every time you play. Where it will land will be a little different. So that if I choose to play that same campaign over again, I'm like, oh, I know it's gonna, go right back down to Mir next time, or I know it's gonna go down to Razdor, and I can just, anticipate that and always get the good stuff.
Speaking of the caravan, you can get some awesome goods from that and maybe some rare items. How does character customization work in this? You talked a little about how you can craft your own items and you can mine, but what type of items can you do? How can you build out your character?
Yep. So when you're controlling your character in the Isofarian Guard, everything is managed on a character dashboard. So you've got a couple different cubes that you're moving around for your health and for your AP, which is your action points that you use to power your abilities. Also within the dashboard, you've got 4 different slots for the character's equipment, and then you've got an area called a satchel. The 4 different slots for the equipment are for the weapon, for the armor, for an accessory, and for an item. And you can wear obviously one thing in each one of those slots, and you can also carry up to 3 of each one of those types in your character's satchel as well. So this allows you on the road to be able to swap equipment. If I come up to a battle or something like this, and I could tell that enemies are doing something specific, like, throwing poison chips in my character's bag, maybe I'll equip accessory, a specific accessory that makes me immune to poison. I don't take damage anymore. Or, gives me more defensive chips for something because, the enemies are really dishing out a lot of damage and I need to change my tactics. Or, I want to swap out a specific armor piece that gives me a specific ability. Because in this game, specific equipment pieces actually unlock new abilities for your characters. And this is part of where the character customization is. So half the fun in the combat of this game is actually setting up your engine, so to speak, before you go into combat. So I equip this gear, I equip up to 6 different ability cards, and I am building an efficient engine going into combat and how it will work.
So this sounds a little bit different than other board games that follow a similar theme of leveling up and character customization. It almost sounds like in this one, from your description, that you might not just have one build for this character. You might have a couple builds, and you would swap between them based upon the enemies that you're facing. Is that correct?
That's exactly correct. So, like, players who are familiar with the Stonebound Saga will see a lot of the references and styles that have given a lot of inspiration to our system in the Isofarian Guard. So the Stonebound Saga had 7 different classes of characters to them, and a lot of the styles of gameplay from those 7 different classes you'll see reflected in the guards here. And even within a specific class, we've given them multiple different ways to, go higher attack, higher defense, more action points, more support. It will be tailored exactly how the player wants to play it. And one thing I want to point out really quick, and I've seen a lot of questions about this, is each character in the game has a skill tree that they progress up. So after you defeat an enemy, you're gaining what's called Lux Essence, and that's the experience system in the game. And you are moving a chip up the character's skill tree to unlock bonus chips for their bag, bonus stats for them. The examples that are on the campaign page are actually not final examples. And actually, the image that's used is a duplicated one because each skill tree for the characters is unique. And we're actually going to be expanding upon the skill tree system. It's not going to be like one big board that's really tall. We're probably going to have one that's more square, smaller icons, and lots of different passive trees so that you can really go up multiple different areas and have very specific roles for your character that will feel completely different.
Stop it. This is going to be too excited for this game. That's awesome. I'm so glad to hear that. So it sounds like even if you were to play the campaign again, you could totally go down a different path and have a different experience. And that's on top of the different builds you would be doing.
Yeah, if you were to play the campaign again, yes, you would know the main storyline and maybe how the campaign ends, the finale of it, but the way the combat will feel, you can play completely different. Just like in Skyrim, like, hey, I want to play, complete with sword and shield, standard sword and board, or I want to play mage or whatever the next time. Like, you can make each one of these characters feel completely different each time, and the story can actually be completely experienced in a new way because there's a ton of branching paths in this game and major decisions. So even in the first campaign in the gameplay example that we've given so far with Grigory, you start the game, he travels to Silney, and even in the first scene there at Castle Strigg, he's presented with an option. He talks to King Karst, and there's this character called Timnota that comes out, and the game presents you with a decision after this specific scene. And if the people that are listening, if they haven't heard that, I would encourage them to go listen to the scene. It's an incredible scene. And right after the scene happens, the player is prompted, do I talk to the king alone in his chambers about this, or do I confront Timnota right now about what she just challenged me on? Based on what you do in that very decision, your path completely changes in the direction that you go. And there's dozens and dozens of these decisions in each one of the campaigns. So I can play through campaign 1 completely down one side, and if I decide to play campaign 1 again at a different time, I can take the other side and all the other different trees to experience the story in a new way. And if you're using foreteller, you'll hear all the different voice acting and all the different music that goes along with all those unique scenes as well.
So that's kind of crazy. You have the voice actors for all these branching options as well.
Yep. There's an entire voice acting cast that we have. That we've got some amazing talent that we brought on for this project. Julie Elvin, who sung the main theme for the Isofarian Guard, has done work on World of Warcraft, League of Legends, Horizon Zero Dawn. It turned out amazing. And then some of the voice acting, the cast that we have, they've done incredible work. There's a guy that's been on The Office and Arrested Development. There's a 3-time Emmy Award winning voice actor in there. Like, Foreteller has done an incredible job of bringing on amazing voice actors to really capture the characters that we really envisioned for this title.
So we talked about the campaigns. You have 4 campaigns in this game, and each campaign follows a pairing of 2 characters. Is that correct?
That's correct. Four separate campaigns. Each one lasts about 8 to 10 hours, and each specific campaign is paired with 2 of the Isofarian Guard.
And so if you're playing solo, can you play one character, or do you play 2 characters at a time?
Yeah, if you're playing solo, you would actually control both characters at the same time. So you're going to be reading and or listening to the story through the eyes of those specific characters. So you're going to hear their lines, you're going to hear the voice acting of those two characters. So that's why the campaigns were specifically tailored to them.
Yeah, that makes sense, especially since if you look at the Kickstarter page, there's these awesome miniatures with actually two characters on a single base, and they're awesome poses. So I'm guessing these are the two characters that are for each of those campaigns.
Yeah, that's correct. We wanted to do something a little different with having dual character miniatures with custom bases, really dynamic poses that look like they were in a scene together, battling together, and we think they turned out incredible.
And so if someone else wanted to join a campaign that's currently playing, they could just jump in as one of those two characters, or likewise leave, and I would just take over both characters.
Yep, that's exactly right. We designed the system to where someone can start on their own, have a friend show up one night, jump right in and take over, and then, have the original character complete the story at another time seamlessly.
So what about mixing and matching characters between campaigns? I know it kind of break the theme a little bit because
Yep.
you've got these awesome voice actors, and it's really sounds like the campaigns are set around those characters. So
Yep.
it'd be kind of weird, but is it possible? How's that work?
Yeah, this has actually been, specific in the last few days, I've seen this question come up a lot. Like, what if I want to, have Vera and, Catherine together, or Grigory and, Pavel, or whatever. Because, like I said, all these characters feel different. And what I want to, try these different combinations and see where they would work. So to speak to that, the four different campaigns are written specifically to the characters. So yeah, you're reading what they said in a situation, you're listening to what they said in a situation. It would feel kind of jarring and weird to be playing two separate characters, but be hearing or reading the actual lines from different characters in a specific scene. And as far as the mechanics of the game, each campaign was designed and balanced to highlight the strengths of these pairs and to exploit some weaknesses in specific scenes, specific battles. So the numbers were specifically tailored and balanced for those pairs. So yeah, it would work if someone really, wanted to go through a campaign using other characters while listening to, the lines of the other ones, but it's going to be more balanced and play a lot more solid with the characters that they were meant to go on. Now, not going to give anything away too much, but there may be other content that we haven't talked about yet that may allow you to combine separate characters. I'll just leave it there. We may hear about that before the end of the campaign, depending on how it goes.
So if you guys want to know more, check the campaign towards the end. So I'm curious, why did you limit the game to one or two players? Has it hurt or helped you in generating excitement for the game? Or
this is an area that I really thought this player count would be just the perfect spot for this title. It's a player count that I think needs more titles. Not everybody can get together with their gamer group all the time. There's a lot of solo gamers out there, or couples, or people that can just get together with one friend here and there. And this was specifically designed for that small group. So I saw the need for that, and the system really plays better at 1 to 2. The table would be huge, and there would be so much going on trying to force a third, fourth, or fifth player. So if people wanted to see what we can do with multiple players, the Stonebound Saga supports 2 to 6 players as well. But this was really designed for that small group experience.
I do appreciate that, because I feel like there's a lot of games nowadays that have on the higher player counts, or maybe on the lower player counts in some cases as well. It's on the box, but it really doesn't play that well. And so it sounds like you've already considered that.
Yeah, and we didn't want to force it. Like a lot of games will try to force, and usually it's the opposite, honestly. You'll see a game that's like 2 to 5, 2 to 6, or whatever, and many people will clamor for the solo mode or the solo option, and it's kind of forced in there, kind of a second thought. And I wanted it to be the primary thought. But the primary design was for 1 to 2 players. Everything was geared towards that more focused experience. I mean, to be honest, you're going to be listening to large chunks of story and reading and stuff, and in a large group, keeping the attention span and the distractions and stuff isn't going to be the same, and maybe not as immersive as experiencing it, yourself or with one other person.
And so how does player elimination happen in this game? If it happens, like if I was playing with 2 players at the table and one character unfortunately didn't survive and the other one continued on, how does that work?
I can tell you've been reading the comments on the wall today. So absolutely came up today. And when a character goes down in battle, if one survives, I should say, and one is still or has fallen, the party will continue. So the player isn't eliminated, but they are out until the other character is raised. And there's multiple different ways to raise a character in this game. So just like you save in the game to recover, you can make your way back to an inn to recover the health. You can also use different items in the game that can temporarily revive you and different things like that. And there's even, you can craft and purchase items to do some fast traveling. So if you want to get out of an area really quick, you picked up something rare from, this epic battle that you just did, but you got to make it all the way back down to the end. You use some fast travel, you use some different things to get down to where you need to recover. There are ways and penalties for losing in the game, but we tried to minimize them as much as possible so it wasn't so punishing. And to answer your question further, if both characters die in the wild, you reset back to the last inn that you rested at. And something unique actually happens when you fall. So all the equipment that you have equipped to your characters is there. It's not touched. So you're not like showing up the inn with like nothing on. But everything that is stored in your character's satchels drops right at the node that you were at. And after you reset at the end, you will have to make it back to that same location in order to reacquire the loot that was in your satchel. If you were to fall again before making it to the satchel, you'll completely lose the contents. So that's where the penalty can come into play. And we try to minimize that as much as possible by allowing you to keep everything that's equipped on your characters. You don't lose those, so you're not starting from scratch with no equipment, but you'll lose things like enemy drops and gold and things like that.
So we're talking about how you lose items or keep track of items and other gear in the game. How does that tie into wanting to save a game state after a play of however long you want to play?
Yep. So there's a couple different aspects to saving the game. Like I said, inns are where you go to actually save the location of your game. But as far as how much progress you made on the skill tree, how many chips are in the character's bag, which cards are on my character, what's in my inventory. So there's actually a chest system in specific cities. So I can store things in this chest, and this will probably be represented. We're probably going to use the game tray system that we unlocked actually as the first stretch goal of this campaign. So the characters are going to have little character trays where you can put the specific chips that are in their bag right in there. They'll slot right in. All the equipment that's in there, all the different unlocks, and mark exactly what inn you're at as well. So it'll be a very quick save system. Setup and breakdown is no more than like 5 to 10 minutes, so it's very quick.
That seems like a point to bring up even further. Adventure game, dungeon crawl, leveling up game that takes 5 to 10 minutes to set up is kind of unheard of. So
yeah, it was something that I personally don't like games that are like massive to set up. So I wanted something that you fold out the map, you put the 2 character dashboards down, I throw chips in my bag, I open the rule book, and I'm done. Like I'm ready to go right into the actions. The story is center stage, so I don't really have to set up that, and the bag system doesn't take long to set up. Just a few cards and some chips.
I want to start talking about the combat in this game a little bit. We talked about how this is a bag builder, and you have action points and how to use these chips to attack and defend against enemies. If you don't mind describing that a little bit to our audience.
For sure. So the combat system is unique in that you're going to first draw chips equal to the character's action points, these little clear gray cubes. And most of the characters in the game start with 2 of these cubes. So every turn, you're going to be drawing chips individually. And I say that specifically because you don't want to draw 2 chips out at the same time, because there are negative chips that enemies are going to put in your bag that will trigger when you pull them. That's why they're 1 at a time. So you'll pull these chips out specifically, and then you'll place these chips on your character's ability cards to power them. So these chips are actually acting kind of as a stamina system for your character, and they will eventually run out of your bag. So back to how they're used, you're going to be placing the chips on the character's ability cards, and the ability will indicate how many chips are needed, as well as how many AP are needed to power the ability. So for example, Cross Strike, one of the first abilities for Grigory, is 1 sword chip and 1 AP, and it modifies his attack by 1. So he swings in for 1. And I slide the cube down for 1 action point, and it used the 1 chip. And I will probably have 1 cube left, and I'll have 1 chip left to possibly power something else as well. And then once all of my characters are done in combat, I refresh my action points back to normal, and the enemies begin their turn. Now, the enemies don't use chips like we do. Instead, they have an AI system or card system that they'll draw, and you'll follow the actions on their turn. They'll resolve their damage, and then it will go back to you as well.
Yeah, that seems really interesting. One thing that I've seen come up, and I know you're already aware of this, but I've seen comments on BGG, on the Kickstarter page, and elsewhere that some people are concerned that there's not enough player agency or decisions in the combat, and especially talk about the lower level characters. I know you posted an update recently showing some more interesting combinations. Can you talk a little more about that?
Yeah, that's even before the campaign page or the campaign started, we knew that we were going to get a couple questions about the combat system that were like this. And it was actually one of our biggest concerns is we did not want the system to play itself. So yes, I've got these chips in a bag. I'm drawing them randomly every turn. But how do I mitigate the randomness? How can I manipulate the system? How can I have meaningful choice on my turn? No one just wants to have the bag just play itself. I don't want to just let the system go and just see what happens. As much as I'm building the character beforehand with my equipment and my ability cards, I do want to have multiple options. I do want to be able to adjust my strategy when I face enemies. So the first campaign, the opening scenario that we've shown so far, didn't really highlight the strengths of that. And we probably could have done that a little bit better, because in the very beginning of the game, when you're controlling just Grigory before he teams up with Alec, he has a very limited ability set, and he doesn't have a lot of options. So he's got 4 different abilities. He's placing 1 sword chip or 1 shield chip or 2 swords or 2 shields. Nothing too big. I'm just drawing the chip. I'm placing it. But a little after those opening scenes, the combat system really opens up. You start getting new abilities called speaking stones that are not powered by chips at all. And instead of using chips, you're using these little gems that have a cooldown period. So you activate them on 1. They are not utilized on round 2, and then they come back on round 3. So they're every other turn. This creates some interesting combinations between when I use my chip abilities and when I use my speaking stone abilities. So timing is very important in this game. A lot of the character abilities are actually triggered by what the enemies do on their turn. So remember, I talked about the enemies having a AI system earlier. There's 8 different specific cards in the deck for each enemy. And 6 of them, there's 3 pairs of cards, and there's 2 unique cards or special cards in their deck. So as the enemies are flipping these cards over, you have to pay attention to what AI cards are being flipped. If they draw one of those special cards, it's going to be more of a stronger ability. I know that there's less odds for another one to show up in the deck because one is already flipped over. And say I'm using Grigory, I have an ability called Focus Stance. If I can predict when the enemy will use their special attack and I activate Focus Stance before they do it, I get a bonus of an extra AP on my next turn, and I'm able to do more things. So there's this card counting aspect that's going on the side where I have to pay attention to what the enemy's doing. But back to your original question about the character customization. Each character has up to 6 different slots to equip character abilities. And in the very beginning of the game, it's kind of acting as a tutorial with Grigory. He has those 4 different abilities. Those will vastly change as you progress in the story. You will get dozens of different ability cards, and you'll be able to swap those cards out, giving you the choice of what you want to do. Different speaking stone abilities, different basic abilities that are powered with chips. You will control how it plays, more offensively, more defense, more utility, all those different things. And then when you get a second character and they start synergizing together, the different abilities from your first character and your second character will start comboing off of each other, and the order in which you do things will matter. And in addition to all the character abilities, your actual equipment will affect what you can do with your chips. You actually alluded to that in the recent update that we did. We had some rings that were revealed with this caravan on one of our stretch goals coming up. And it talked about storing chips. So a lot of people have been making comments about, I draw chips and it's very, obvious what I can do. I draw one chip. Oh, look, I have one card that has a sword chip. I have to obviously do that. So we wanted to give the player more choice by choosing maybe not to attack on this turn, and instead storing the chip without using it and without discarding it on a specific piece of equipment. Once I get enough chips stored up, I can boost my stats, or I can boost my AP for the remaining of the battle. So I can start ramping up my action points. I can start doing stronger attacks, different things like that. We also, and I'm actually going to speak to this in a gameplay video that we're putting together right now. One of the main systems, and I'm going to go back to the Stonebound Saga for a second. For players that have played the Stonebound Saga, in that game, you're also drawing cards to power the character's abilities. But even when you don't have the cards to use their abilities, we built in a system called standard attack. So even if I don't have the cards, I can always do a standard attack. I can always do like a general attack that I know will do damage. So we actually have a system in this game that does the same thing that we haven't talked about too much. And we actually had implemented it more within the equipment and the abilities, and we're actually going to switch it into the core gameplay. And this is more towards the feedback that we've been getting about the combat. So the way this will work is when you're drawing your chips in the beginning of your turn, let's say I drew 2 shields. When I draw 2 shields, usually my option is I can power my defensive abilities. But what if I want to attack? That's kind of frustrating. Like the enemy's got 1 hit point left and I'm just going to shield. That doesn't even make any sense. So we had abilities in the game where you can use chips on an ability to convert a chip into the opposite type. So we're going to use that same mechanic and say, if I draw 2 of the same type of chip, I can actually convert 2 into 1. So I will have the choice of attacking on that turn, but I will be more limited in what I could do. So for example, if I drew that double shield, I can turn it into 1 sword chip and choose to attack and end the enemy's turn instead, but I will be, I won't have any defense that turn as well. That will really give some better choices and strategic decision making.
Yeah, one of the other things I saw on the previews on the page were cards that would do things I wasn't expecting in a bag builder. Like it would generate green cubes, and once you got enough green cubes, you could power something up. So it sounds like you're got a lot more tricks in the bag per se to reveal to us in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. The combat system was designed to be really fast and really fun. It's not a brain burner. Like it's not like I'm sitting there like analyzing what I should do. I didn't want that. I wanted you to get right back to the story and experiencing that open world adventure. I didn't want you to like be sitting in a battle for like 10 to 15 minutes. That's not what the goal is here. So the combat should be strategic and fun, but also quick, but also feel interesting too. It shouldn't be too easy. So yeah, we have different abilities that do some unorthodox things. They synergize with the other characters. I can add chips to my allies bag. This is really neat when you're playing co-op. You feel like you're helping each other and not, selfishly just, hitting the enemy myself and defending. But, I am actually assisting my ally who's, low on defense by giving them more defensive tokens. Or, my ally can be throwing offensive tokens my way. And you mentioned green chips. The green chips are actually very unique in this game because when you draw green chips, they actually don't count against your draw count for the turn. So I could be drawing extra chips on my turn. They kind of act as mitigating tools because I have more options available to me. And remember those rings I talked about where you can store chips on them? when you start adding green chips and I'm drawing extra chips on my turn that I can't use, guess where those chips are going? So I can do my existing abilities and start powering up those rings for bonuses at the same time. So the system really starts to hit on a lot of different cylinders the further it progresses.
Sounds like you really thought of a lot of different options how to push this bag building mechanic. That's exciting to hear.
Yeah, it's definitely a fun system. With the Stonebound Saga, with Visions of Teleos, and with this game, the game was designed in a way that we enjoy playing it. Like if we're not enjoying the game ourselves, then is anybody else going to enjoy this game? So we're having a blast as a team playing this game, and we're really looking forward to sharing this out with people. We think people are really going to love it.
Also, I'm hearing a theme from you when describing this game that it's all about the narrative. Like, that's the core purpose of this game with combat and puzzles and exploration all mixed into it.
Yep.
So maybe that's something to keep in mind if someone's looking for like a combat experience. Like, it's definitely in here, but the core is definitely narrative.
Yeah, the core is all about the story, and everything else is enhancing that experience. The combat is definitely there, and it's fun. Drawing chips and applying it and all that stuff. Like, if I wanted all narrative, I would read a book or listen to an audiobook, but this is a game. So yeah, those mechanics are there to make the narrative and story even more engaging. When I hear in the narrative that I'm fighting this incredible boss or whatever, it's going to be way more intense and fun when I'm controlling what's happening with chips and with abilities with my character.
So talk about the narrative and how people can obviously read the book if they want, but we do have that foreteller app. But talk about that a little bit more in the sense that, like, how did that affect your design process or creation of the game, if it did at all?
It was an amazing kind of series of events that led us to partner with foretellers. So I actually saw a post from one of the main guys from Foreteller in a Gloomhaven group a handful of months ago. Foreteller was working on scenarios for Gloomhaven, and they kind of put in an example out there of what it would sound like, just grabbing some feedback, like, hey, what does the community think about this? Is this something that you would like? As soon as I heard the voice acting, the music, the effects that they put behind, I'm like, they've really got something special here. And I had not thought about using voice acting or music for the Isofarian Guard up to that point. But when I heard that example, I'm like, this is what this game needs to really stand apart, to take the story to the next level. Because it's one thing to just read a story and experience it that way, but it's a completely different experience to read and listen at the same time. Is my preferred method, is reading the text while I'm listening to it. It's just an incredible experience. So long story short, I reached out to the guys at Foreteller after I heard that example. I said, hey, I've got this project coming up. Would you guys be interested in partnering with it? It turns out the Foreteller team has been big fans of the Stonebound Saga for a long time. And I'm like, wow, this will end up being a great fit because they were already invested in those games and in the story, and they got right behind this as well. So now we're just really excited to be working with that team. And as you've heard on the campaign page, what they've done so far with the narrative has been absolutely unbelievable.
It sounds awesome and epic, and it definitely gives me vibes of these RPGs, these cutscenes almost, but in a board game analog setting.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. It's definitely a unique experience, and the voice acting and narration part of this game for Foreteller will actually be around like I think like 8 to 9 hours worth of audio, just to give people like an idea of how much content is there. It's incredibly worth it to add Foreteller onto for the experience and the immersion that's being added.
So what do you find most challenging when trying to create this game, either through the design process or publishing it? Because you're tying a lot of elements. You're tying in an open world system, this narrative element with like Foreteller and its soundtrack. There's a lot of moving pieces. And so how did you approach this, and what was most difficult in that?
There's absolutely a lot of moving pieces in the process here. And I mean, luckily, I don't have to manage the Foreteller side in that's a separate team that's doing that. So there's a huge team that's behind this project. It's not just a couple guys. I would say the most challenging aspect is both keeping that open world experience while having, the narrative progress at a good pace, and balancing the enemies as they progress along the story. Kind of like the ramping system. You kind of have to curve the balance. There's a lot of math that goes behind it, and making it feel seamless. Not big jumps in difficulty and different things like that. So it just feels smooth. You'll find that design it that if the player doesn't want to explore the entire game and they just want to experience the story and they go straight through the story, that they can do that, but it definitely will be more of a difficult experience that way because you're not doing the equipment crafting as much. You're not doing the side quests where a lot of the meat of the game is, more of the experience of the game is. But you could definitely do that. Those side things that we've built into the system, those things are definitely encouraged as you progress in the system as well, or along the campaigns as well.
Yeah, that sounds difficult to balance for sure. What are you most proud of with creating this game?
Well, I'm really proud of my team. David Yanchik, who has written the story, has done an amazing job, created some amazing characters. These are characters that we actually had designed for a while. They were actually a stretch goal from our last campaign with Visions of Teleos. If people go back to that campaign, they'll see a group called the Isofarian Guard that was going to be added to the Stonebound Saga as a group. There was even a playmat of that game from the Isofarian snowfields was the playmat there. So there's some interesting tie-ins, but really proud of my team, the time that they put in over the last year and a half, with all the writing, with all the design work, in making a game of this scope. It's just huge. It really is a big game, but it's going to be worth it at the end. We really think there's something very special here, that's going to be something that'll be on shelves and tables for years to come.
That's awesome. So, how can listeners purchase the game? I know it's on Kickstarter right now.
Yep.
If you listen to us when it's posted, so you have some time to back it, and you can potentially late back as well, I'm assuming. But are there other venues outside of Kickstarter?
Yeah, so the campaign will run until midnight on the morning of October 4th. And we will obviously open up a pledge manager and late pledge system. We're going to be using Game on Tabletop for that after the Kickstarter is ended. I don't have a timetable on how long that will be open, but that will be available to people if they happen to miss the campaign. But obviously, we would love your support during the campaign because we can unlock more stretch goals and content now as well. But as far as outside of the campaign, outside of the pledge manager itself, the game will be available to some select retailers. There's quite a few retailers that have jumped out of the campaign already worldwide. So there will be the Isofarian Guard in different stores around, but there's no guarantee that this game will reach distribution. There never is really with any game, as much as we would like that to happen. This game specifically, though, is big and it's heavy. This is a beefy game. So players are familiar with the game Vindication by Orange Nebula. Right now, it's the exact same box dimensions. It could be a little bigger than that depending on the content that we unlock during the campaign, but it's a big box. It's probably going to end up being around 15 pounds, maybe a little bit more. Over 100 weighted chips, close to 1,000 cards, the game tray system. This is a lot of content. So a game like that has premium components maybe isn't the best fit for distribution and to be out in the stores. So much like chip theory games that are directly through the website, we will probably have a similar approach if it doesn't go the distribution. So you'll be able to get it at some select retailers. We will continue to support retailers as well directly if it doesn't go to distribution. And of course, we will have it available on our website, which is skykingdomgames.com as well.
Great. I think another thing we should mention too are the potential Kickstarter exclusives, because I'm not seeing any on the page. Are you expecting to have any in the future?
No, our team actually is not a big fan of Kickstarter exclusives, especially ones that are gameplay related. We do like ones that are maybe like alternate art and things like that, and we actually have done things like that with the Stonebound Saga in our previous campaign. But with this one, just really wanted to pack the core box with everything. The people that missed the campaign, they're not going to be missing anything big. They're still going to get that same experience in the box, and didn't want to add any optional add-ons or optional buy-ins that increase the price. No, this is going to be a core game for $79 that has everything. There's no, expansion that seems forced or too early. everything right there.
Yeah, I really like that. I'm getting a little tired of these Kickstarter exclusives, all these add-ons, and the price just seems inflated
It goes up
after
and
you
up.
start adding everything together. It
Yep.
does.
It does.
and you get that FOMO from the Kickstarter exclusives, or maybe you missed out. Now it's like, well, do I really want to buy this game because I'm not gonna get the quote unquote full experience? And you don't have any of that in this campaign, from what you're telling me.
Yeah, well, it really the game itself is the FOMO. You don't want to miss this title. This is something we think that's a very unique title. The blend of the different mechanics, the partnership with Foreteller. There's really nothing like it in the industry right now that combines professional voice acting, a musical score, an open world with all the different customization. It's going to be something really neat.
You're checking out my boxes on that list. So awesome. Well, thank you so much, Eric, for spending this time talking with me about this game.
Thanks so much for having me, Steve.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule for that. So for our listeners, I'll be putting a link to the Kickstarter in the notes for this podcast. But honestly, go out to Kickstarter and look for the Isofarian Guard. I'll be on there for the next couple of weeks until, what'd you say, October?
October 4th at midnight.
I'd like to thank a couple of our Patreon supporters, Andrew Barrett and Whiplash, who are co-op MVPs, and Joe Sokol, who's a co-op fan. Thanks you so much for your support. And thanks everyone for listening, and thanks Eric again for joining us, and we'll see you at the next stop.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the One Stop Co-op Shop podcast. Please check out our YouTube channel at One Stop Co-op Shop. If you want to reach out to us, the best place to talk to us all is on the Slack. See the show notes for details. Also, you can support us on Patreon. Check out patreon.com/onestop. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you all next week with another Top 5 list.